Hello and welcome to the Villa Park podcast. It's me, Rich, and I'm back with another successful Talking Tactics. It's been a few weeks since we've done one of these, especially in the Premier League. But Gareth, good to be back talking about a win, a much-needed win, and probably one that was, I guess, a 6-pointer in the end because it has put us back into the shout for Europe. And yeah, I dread to think what would have happened if we hadn't have got the victory.
Yeah, deep breath. That's the way I thought about it, was after the game. Deep breath. And yeah, I mean, it was kind of in the balance for a while. I think when we weren't quite sure, did we deserve it? I don't know. But we got it done. I mean, and that's what matters the most. Conceding first again, and we still managed to get a win against Chelsea. A side who, let's be honest, when they come to Villa Park in the past, we never really sort of tend to do very well. So it was good to see, and results have gone with us this weekend pretty much. So we're back in it, aren't we?
Absolutely. Now, we're going to talk later on our fans forum about kind of hopefully backing that up and maybe Aston Villa trying to show that consistency, but analysing the game in terms of statistics, in terms of all your usual stuff. We'll get right into it now. Tailor the tape, match stats, anything that stood out to you here in terms of the way that the game panned out?
I mean, you could probably say even Stevens, couldn't you? Really, with a lot of the
Pretty
stats.
much, yeah.
I mean, a few more clearances for Chelsea, I guess, but the PPDA is not too far. So both teams sort of pressing at the same sort of intensity, but we can still say that 58% of it, the field tilt for us is good. More passes, but again, really we're clutching at straws. Not much in it apart from sort of a different goal kick length, which is quite interesting again.
Yeah, and it was interesting to see because the way the game started, you could see Chelsea really press quite fast, quite quickly, quite heavily, and then Villa did go long quite a few times. But then I don't know whether Chelsea maybe ran out of a little bit of steam in that second half, but certainly some of their quicker players, the likes of Palmer, the likes of Nkunku, maybe because they didn't necessarily have the bench to bring on players to replace. That intensity did drop off just that little bit in that second half, didn't it?
Yeah, and I think that sort of was obviously to our benefit, wasn't it? It gave us that sort of time to play. But yeah, I thought Chelsea set up quite well, especially like I say with the press, and they sort of boxed us off in midfield a little bit. I thought they did quite well, Chelsea, in the shape and everything. But like you say, yeah, the intensity certainly dropped off, and it sort of early on in the second half, wasn't it? Really, as well.
Yeah. It was. Looking at the passing networks, anything that you noticed here in terms of the way both teams tried to utilize their passing?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously tried to sort of stay narrow, didn't we? In the main, you can see a lot of passes between the two centre backs and McGinn and Tielemans. So we're obviously trying to stay that little bit more narrow. Not as effective with Maatsen as opposed to Digne, I don't suppose. Interesting to see where Rashford all fits into this as well. You can see that after the introduction of Rashford and Leon Bailey, they are a lot higher on average than everybody else.
Yeah, it was a kind of a clash of two styles across quite a bit of the game. I guess when Villa were chasing it, like you say, with Bailey on one flank, Rashford on the other, those sort of tactics went a little bit out the window. It was just like, well, let's try and win the game. But certainly the first sort of 70 minutes or so, it was Chelsea expanding the pitch, making it as big as they possibly could, looking wide, Villa trying to be narrow. But Chelsea certainly won that battle in the first half because quite a few Villa players were kind of chasing shadows for a lot of that first half. You could see the frustration and you could see the kind of conflict between, whether they stay with their men or whether they keep with the style that's been told of them to do.
Yeah, and I think Enzo Fernandez was a big problem for us. They didn't know how to track him, and that goes what you just said, basically. They didn't know how to sort of track him properly. So that was quite interesting, I thought.
Yeah, definitely. Looking at the passing sonars, you've got the two Villa ones, which you'll come to in a second, but the Chelsea one, first of all, again, anything you're noticing about the shape, the direction of passes,
Well,
any
yeah.
positional?
Yeah, just using the width a lot, didn't they? They tried to sort of, we forced them out wide, but they wanted to play out wide, I think. So that was quite interesting. I think they struggled a little bit with Pedro Neto just being that false nine, if you like. So that was interesting to see.
Yeah. Yeah. And also the quite left one-on-one, 1v1 at the back quite a lot, and you saw that a bit. And I was really impressed with Marlon when he came on. Obviously, Watkins had done a lot of work, a lot of the groundwork, but I feel like Marlon has got that hold up a little bit more, like it maybe lower center of gravity, maybe touch closer to him in terms of when he's got his back to goal. Sometimes Watkins can get criticised for that. And I thought a couple of occasions where Marlon gets it in those areas, isolates his player one-on-one, and then he's got the pace, hasn't he? That direct pace to try and get past someone. So that'll be quite exciting to see later on in the season.
Yeah, I thought he did well when he come on, man. I thought he did look a threat. I agree with you. And yeah, just Sam, you couldn't finish that goal off, that shot off. But yeah, he was effective, and that's what you want. The impact players, as Unai calls them. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Villa won. I think this is the first half, minutes 1 to 46. Ramsey up quite high there. But yeah, again, we tried utilising Maatsen and Cash, as you can see there, but I guess they were quite isolated because of the way that Chelsea were playing, and we didn't really get going with Asensio and Rodgers in those areas, in the pockets, as they like to call it.
That's right. Yeah, you can see it's sort of quite tight, can't you? Narrow in midfield, but a lot of those passes from some are going forwards. You could probably say Morgan Rogers quite effective on his wheel there. Sort of a lot of different directions, and I think that's probably a fair reflection of the game from when he was moving about the pitch.
Yeah, definitely. Although I do think he was a little bit jaded, but it's one of them, isn't it? We saw him passing more and not necessarily getting the ball in the areas where he could run, and maybe Asensio was getting in those positions. But we'll come on to that a little bit later, because I think in that second half, what Rashford does is so well is he occupies a defender. So you saw Gusto maybe having more effect in that first half, but then second half he couldn't get forward, which left space in that area for Asensio maybe to get the ball a little bit more and link up with Rashford that little bit more.
Yeah, that's right. And I think I wanted to plot sort of after Marcus come on, because I think he created that width. He was really wide, wasn't he, a lot of the time? And we didn't see that Rashford Maatsen combination as well as what I thought we did in the last game, but it was difficult to judge, I suppose. But again, yeah, I think he offered that width on that left-hand side. And I think that was important, because that was clearly the route that we wanted to go down, that we favoured. Moving forward, I think that's a real threat. And I'd like to see him with Luca Digne, just to see what happens.
Yeah, I would as well, because look, Maatsen is got effective going forward, and he can cause problems. But I think maybe the game intelligence he could learn a little bit from Luca Digne. Maybe Digne will give Rashford the kind of backup support and just give him the license to go 1v1, as opposed to maybe Maatsen gets quite close to Rashford, and maybe Rashford thinks, well, I better pass to him because he's here, and then tries to play the 1-2s, whereas Digne would go, right, there's the ball, you go off and do your stuff, and I'll cover you.
Yeah, I think, and that's the route. I think you can't have sort of one wanting to cross and one wanting to drive. The combinations has got to be there. So I think you are right. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. XG, like you said again, fairly even. Villa missing 2 big chances. 6, both teams had 6 on target, but obviously the key stat is the top one. We put 2 of ours away. They only put 1 of theirs away.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, a 2.56 XG, it's not quite 3, so you could say that we scored the 2 goals. We've done quite well, but those big chances missed keep cropping up on here, don't they? Week after week.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Chelsea, the one that sticks out to me is the Cole Palmer one, where he got through and slipped, and Emi slipped, and then I think he slipped again or dived again, and Konsa did really well to go around on the cover. But you get the impression that if that had have gone in, that chance had gone in for Chelsea, they go on and win the game. But it gave Villa a bit more heart to go on and try and win it.
Yeah, I mean, when Cole Palmer went through, I thought he's just going to score. It's inevitable. But factors came against sort of for us, didn't they? Silly little things, and it worked out okay.
Yeah, absolutely. The momentum of the game. Anything that this particularly tells you? I mean, second half, would you say Villa were the ones carrying slight more threat, Chelsea more on the break? Would you say?
Yeah, and I think the chart's a fair reflection of the game. We did, we had most of the positive play, if you like, and the XD reflects that. Our number is only 0.9, but it is relatively low. But it's nothing, it's no dissimilar to Chelsea's really. But what I would say is that the three teams where their highest expected threat were, they've converted the chances.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And throughout the game, it did seem like both teams got into threatening positions, but didn't necessarily do as much as they would have liked with it. I don't recall Emi Martinez having many saves to make at all. Jorgensen made two, and that's probably about it.
It wasn't a lot, was it? That's what I
No.
say. I think apart from sort of these sort of shots from here, there, and everywhere, there was those big chances. But yeah, it was so spread out, wasn't it? That it wasn't sort of that noticeable. Yeah.
Yeah. The charts for the players: expected threat from passes first. Palmer, Neto, Fernandez, top level for Chelsea. Bailey, Tielemans, Asensio for Villa, and Cash there obviously putting a good ball in at the back post for Rashford. But yeah, nothing crazy from this. Would you say?
Yeah, it's a fair assessment. Yeah, nothing crazy. You expect players like Cole Palmer to be out there because they pass into such good areas into the final third. But yeah, not high numbers from anybody really.
No. And then the carries again, Palmer, Neto again. Obviously, he had the effort within the with the goal for Chelsea. Bailey, Tielemans again, Asensio again. But yeah, again, nothing major. And I guess it says what pans out with exactly what I said. Lots of players got into some good areas and looked quite threatening at times, but maybe didn't quite make the right decision, or they got blocked, or a tackle came in from a defender.
Yeah, and that's why we do this, because we know we can see that does the data back up our eye test, which you've just proved the point that it does, because there wasn't that high levels of threat from anybody, and it was kind of a bit hit and miss from everybody, really. But you'd expect players who carry the ball well, like Neto, your Rodgers, your Ramses, and Cole Palmer, to be up there.
Yeah. Well, nice to see Bailey up there for that cameo. And Unai's wanted this, I think, for a long time. The ability to bring players on, even if it's for 15, like 10, 15, 20 minutes, to make an impact, because he didn't have that all last season, or towards the end of last season, and we limped over the line. We keep saying it, we limped over the line to Champions League because we just kept having to, wrap up the 12 players that we could use. It was basically Bailey or Diaby, and then the rest. Whereas now, he can mix and match. Obviously not at the back, but when you've got the likes of Marlon and Bailey coming on to make a massive impact, or Rashford coming on at half time, or even Garcia coming on at fullback, you've got options now to utilize. Whether you mix and match, you can start them for some games, or you can bring them on. And the game finishers, are almost more important than the starters.
100%. Yeah, I mean, you're bringing on players like, your centre half is not going to be classed as that. But if you've got players like Bailey, like Marcus Rashford, for example, like you say, Daniel Marlon, that's what they are there at the club for. They're there to start games, but they're also there to come on and finish the game, be an impact player. Can you affect the game? It's what every manager wants from a substitute.
Exactly. And you do get the impression that if we can get this consistency going, if we can put 1, 2, 3 results together, then we can have a really strong end to the season, purely because, well, we've got good players, but purely because we've got these options as well. No defender can rest, no team can rest, because they know that Rashford will be coming on, or if Rashford's starting, Ramsey will be coming on, or if Asensio's starting, Rodgers might be coming on, or Bailey might be coming on. Like, it's a defender can't rest up. It's going to be relentless.
No, and you saw the Chelsea fullbacks replaced, apart from Cucurella. I think Gusto got replaced. He was worn out.
Exactly. The defensive shape. Talking on, we've talked about attacking. Defensive shape. Anything that you noticed here in particular?
Yeah, it's interesting to see sort of again, you can see that narrow defensive shape from Villa, can't you? You know, sort of
Mm.
even Ollie Watkins sort of quite deep there in the defensive shape. But yeah, I mean you've got your Ramsey's sort of sort of coming back on that left hand side. But interesting, you've got Morgan Rogers quite high on the right on average. So you've literally got that sort of person that's the focal point. Can you get it to him when you break?
Yeah, yeah, and Matson they're tucked in. Uh, maybe they're covering for when Mings drove forward or when Konsa drove forward a little bit with it. But that was interesting because
Yeah, I mean,
his
I think they were quite dominant down their right hand side, weren't they? So I
yes,
take
yeah,
it that back four is squeezed in a little bit more. Hence why Ramsey is then a little bit lower as well.
yeah. But it's just interesting because obviously twice, once against Ipswich, once against Chelsea yesterday. Matson's been caught out with that long switch ball, and maybe he is tucked in just that little bit too far, or maybe it's his body shape, and you could see the Ipswich one in particular. It went over his shoulder, and then he's got a turn. It's kind of a little bit off balance. Then when the strike and the forward player's controlling it and running with it, maybe just has to look a little bit about his body position. Maybe has to look a little bit about his distances. I don't know, but obviously that's an average position, but maybe it's something to look at.
Yeah, yeah, he is. I agree. He's either almost too wide or he's too narrow. So he's got to
Mm.
sort of try and read that play that little bit better. Maybe. And surprised Tyrone's not in his ear a lot more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe Tyrone was just too busy concentrating on his own fitness and his own game. He's thinking, I've just got to try and get through this game by somehow. But unfortunately, he did have to he did get injured. But we'll see what's happening with Tyrone. The goalkeepers, obviously, Jorgensen won't want to remember the winning goal. But yeah, anything apart from that to discuss.
I mean, he prevented 0.39 Jorgensen, but yet he faced 2.39. So he's literally, he has conceded them goals of his own doing almost. But when you look at Martinez, it's just not as great anyway. Some of that goal maybe he should have saved. It was difficult, I know. Interesting that all those Villa shots are low.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Well, you thought the Marlon one? I think the keeper did very well on that one. I mean, it's coming at him fast. Maybe the Watkins one. Maybe his touch took it a little bit slightly too far in front of him. But like I said, we just didn't. Neither team had that many shots, and it was it was one of those games really.
Yeah.
Distance covered. I had a little look at this before, and interesting that midfielders wise, Fernandez covered just over 14 kilometers. Yuri Tillemans pretty much the exact same number, and then Caicedo's just under 11, and John McGinn is like 10 and a half. So both central midfielders on both teams kind of covered the same amount of distance, but I really thought McGinn did a great job in that second half, particularly just riling them up, like getting in their faces. And it's what I've wanted to see from Villa midfield for a long time, because a lot of the time when we come up against these types of midfields, we don't tend to like impose our sort of character on them and get in their faces, which was good to see.
Yeah, and you want to see your captain of all people, like you say, not only a player, but you want to see your captain leading by example. And he definitely did that. I mean, he wasn't sort of fantastically creative. He did the centre midfield job. And he's not been so good at that, John McGinn, has he? Playing in central midfield. We've had our doubts about him in there, but he did really well. But yeah, I noticed the same things as you. All the central midfielders sort of, box to box, really sort of working really, really hard. It's good to see from John McGinn. Probably one of the best defensive performances from him of the season.
Yeah. Anything else in terms of the distance covered or touches that you noticed with any of the players on the pitch?
I think Gusto's distance covered is quite interesting from right back. I didn't notice him get forward that much. So what was he doing? Was he chasing people back a lot? I think he had a lot to do sort of defensively. So whether that was our doing or whether that was more his, I don't know. But yeah, it was interesting to see that. That's the one thing I did notice.
Yeah. He ran across the pitch quite a few times with the ball, which seemed quite strange. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know whether just Chelsea just lost their. It's always interesting when a head coach or when a coach or manager kind of does a slightly different tactic for a game that's sort of left field. It starts off great, But then the players kind of once they get pegged back and it goes 1-1, then they kind of lose their kind of strategy. Do we stick with this kind of newfound strategy that the managers use for this game, or do we try and go back to what we know and what we've done before? And it was a bit like they were a bit half and half, because Palmer went a bit anonymous after that chance he missed, and then Sancho came on and didn't really do anything at all. So it's kind of like they got lost in all of the change of strategy. Reece James as well in central midfield, didn't really do anything apart from, a spell in that first half where they were controlling the game. But after that, it kind of game passed him by a little bit.
Yeah, and you could never say that about us, can you?
No.
In that game, our game plan, we stick to it. You can see what they're trying to do all the time. All right, later on the game, we start to see it go wider a lot more rather than more central. So you can see patterns of play going. But yeah, I thought the same as you, Chelsea. I thought it sort of went a bit skew. Reece James in midfield was a very strange choice for me. I don't quite know what all that was about. But yeah, their tactical discipline sort of panicked, or not panicked, but tactically panicked, let's say.
Yeah, just slightly unravelled, I would say. Last one, just zones of control, because I noticed this one and I seen, and obviously this talks about, this kind of illustrates the tactics shown from both managers. Villa controlling quite a few of the central areas, and then Chelsea controlling quite a few of the wider areas on the pitch, which was, what both teams were aiming to do. Is just Villa kind of finished their 2 chances and Chelsea only finished 1.
Again, I'll go back to what I said before. That's why we plot the data to see if it passes the eye test. And it has done here, hasn't it? You've summed it right up. They played in wide areas. We played in central areas. We tried to force them wide. That's what's happened. Interesting. We've got a little bit of sort of control up on that high sort of final third left-hand side. That's quite interesting. So we obviously controlled that a little bit more. Yeah, but the Viz tells the story.
Yeah, well, that leads into my final point. The Rashford coming on obviously gave us, in that high left position. I mean, he has really hit the ground running, hasn't he, for Villa? And you can see the quality that a player like he has. You can see how he occupies defender and other teams' minds. They see Rashford's name on the team sheet or coming on for the bench and think, you know what, we're going to have to watch out for this, because all of a sudden a fullback doesn't go as far forward as they were. That in turn leaves space for another player. And also with him himself, when he's in this kind of mood, I know it's only 3-4 games into his spell at Villa, but certainly the signs are good. He's getting the ball. He's been told go and attack, go and create. And then the set piece delivery as well. We haven't had a player who can deliver a set piece like him in about 5 years.
No, and I think from what I took from it mainly was as well is that he looks fit. He hasn't played for a long, long time, but he looks fit. He looks playing with a smile on his face. He looks to be creative, as you say. That's why I think we'd like to see him a little bit more with Digne, just to see if that relationship can develop a little bit more, because I can see those overlaps from Digne coming. The crossing, he's got good crossing ability, which, again, we've missed a little bit. We haven't got that on the right-hand side, have we? Mm-hmm. So I think it's interesting, but I totally agree. He looks fit. The only quandary for me is, does he start or is he better coming off the bench?
Yeah, that's going to be the interesting one, and we'll see over the next few weeks. And it's going to be, after the Brentford away game and then the Bruges game, we've got a bit of a break, so that's going to be good in terms of giving the players a bit of time off. They might go off for some warm weather training, get some relationships going with certain players, get some players back fit, like properly fit, and then ready for the run-in. But yeah, certainly signs are good. Obviously, Asensio as well with 2 goals. I felt like the game was a little bit passing by in that first half, but as I said, he was there at the right place at the right time, and you give players with that quality, time and space, then they're going to punish you. They're going to score goals. So that's a real positive sign. And look, you sign players in January to make an impact, and at the minute it looks like Marlon, Garcia, Asensio, and Rashford are all having a positive impact.
Totally agree. Yeah, I can't disagree with you. And I thought Garcia was unlucky to be dropped, to be honest. I think, despite a mistake in the previous game with the pass, I thought he was quite unlucky to be dropped, because I was quite impressed with him. But yeah, as you say, you sign these players in January to make an impact, and they all have.
Yeah. Well, Palace coming up on Tuesday night. It's got to be another win, hasn't it? If we want to keep this momentum up, if we want to keep this challenge for the top 5, let's say, we have to get wins. Like draws aren't going to get you anywhere in the table, and defeats, you're going to end up in 10th position before you know it.
Yeah, and the way the teams above us are playing, they're all playing quite well, aren't they? So, yeah, Palace is a tricky game, because Palace are quite indifferent, aren't they? But yeah, it's got to be a win. Yeah, you're dead right. We have to keep winning.
Yeah. Well, Gareth, thank you so much. There's more visuals. We only do a few on this show, just to give you the main points and talking points. But where will you be posting these on your socials, mate?
Yeah, I'll post them all on that one Villa analysis in a little while.
Brilliant stuff. Well, thank you all for watching. We'll be back with a Fans Forum special tonight, i.e. Sunday. So make sure you catch that shortly. 9:30, we're going live, talking about our attacking options, talking about our defensive disasters, let's say. Mings potentially now out. How are we going to cope with that? And then all your comments and questions as well. So do get involved in that show. We've got Palace preview. We've got Palace reaction, Palace talking tactics, loads of shows to come this week. So make sure you smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, help us on the road to 6K. Get your comments in. Thank you, Gareth, for joining me. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And as always, remember, we all follow the Villa.